Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 3 of Chess My Nuts. Here we got onto the challenge. We'll see that there is double Jinx with the white pieces versus Turt with the black pieces. Waiting for double Jinx's first move. We're seeing d4 from Jinx. There's a few ways you can play this. There's b6. It's the immediate c5. e5 with England. Most principled move, playing into the Indian. Double Jinx awake arc. Yeah, I can't believe he's finally awake. So the most principled move goes this. There's also this. Okay, Jinx playing the London. There's main move is this. Next move here. Jinx seems partial to the Joe Bartha London. Although it's not called the Joe Bartha London anymore after the drama in a tournament recently with Padur Joe Bartha saying some interesting things. I believe it's now called the Report London after Richard Report. Also plays it, but standard move here. And we're seeing the most challenging approach by Turt, evidently having studied. He's playing Bishop G4. Thank you for the follow. Knight B-D. These sorts of things very common in the London. Maybe H3 not so much, because then you take and this is arguably weakening. Here. This is a terrible move. Snap taking with the pawn is not a good idea when you're looking to bring your knight to here and then into the center. I would argue now that Turt is probably better in this position. I'd like, at the very least, the queen on f3 would be better placed than the queen on, say, c2, which is very common. There's also queen b3 after c3. Looking to target this weak pawn, but it's dangerous. And more importantly, there's this with no bishop here anymore. Yogurt has redeemed stretch. So Jinx, taking his time, there's a couple moves that make sense here. He's evidently not going to castle this way when it's so open. So probably c3 castles long is not a bad idea. Yeah, c3, queen b3, long castles, king b1. Might lead to a very nice attacking position for Turt, because these pawns are going to go down the board. Yeah, bishop b5, it's a reasonable move. I'm not so certain that this is... I don't think that this is a particularly good move. Honestly, takes is not awful. I mean, conserving the bishop pair is probably a good idea here. Yeah, I'd be quite happy just playing c3 here. Maybe queen here, putting more pressure onto this knight. Jinx taking his time, spending those 10 seconds thinking, what is hanging, what is not? Is a4 a move? a4 is a move, but it's... In the London, you would prefer your queen to come out instead of the pawn. And especially considering he can't castle this way, queen a4 and then long castles is a much more preferable idea. especially given with potential idea to trade this bishop here. Queen a5 is, Queen a4 is basically everything that white can do. Yeah, and he finds queen a4. Likely going to trade here. I'd like to see castles first. He's gonna... Okay, so this is actually a very good idea from Jinx. Can't take here, or else you lose the rook. So instead he takes in the center, that's fine. I would probably take this way. Maintaining the strong bind and preparing some knight into here. Again, king b1, always a useful move. If ever this bishop moves, you have to also be careful of bishop a3 because of the queen's pin on this pawn. This queen currently defends the a3 square, so it's fine for now. Yeah, taking with the e-pawn. Jinx now has some very nice open lines here, looking with these rooks. It's a precarious position. There's lots to play for here. And definitely, it's difficult to say who's better, but all Turt needs to do is move this rook onto the c-file, and then suddenly this attack is slightly less potent. That's a suspect move. Takes... Can't take with the pawn, that's just so weakening, so takes. And I can't help but think that this is looking bad for Turt. I suppose, well, I mean, queen takes and then that. I mean, but then white doesn't have so much of an attack anymore, and yeah, castling into the attack is very brave. Here, again, danger levels, but here you have to consider the counting exercise. What happens after the pawn takes? It attacks the queen. Of course, there's not an issue, because if after bishop takes here check, defends the bishop that way. But you do have to be a bit cerebral about this. And with this looks like a feast for this bishop. Just take, and it looks so good. Pawn basically has to take here, and again, getting a knight into here does not look bad. Getting your pieces around. I would not mind bringing the bishop back to here, patrolling this diagonal. Look at that, how much it laser beams on its own. This bishop is easily a, 3.5 point bishop. This bishop over here, meanwhile, has 2 squares it can go to. One where it doesn't get traded off. Very important. You want to conserve this bishop. This is a fantastic bishop. Pawn takes. Fair move. Again, various knight moves are here. You can consider king b1, activate a rook. But activating a rook makes lots of sense. h1, e1. You could do that, but the thing is, you want to use both the rooks. And if you make h to e, then you have to make a break on the d file, and the only way to do that is by playing c4, and that exposes your king a ton. So DE makes a lot more sense, because you can use both of the open files for yourself. But I think what black would really want here, or rather what white would really want here, is to somehow get rid of this bishop. Maybe play f3, move the knight into the center, and they'd be very, very happy. So I wouldn't be surprised if... but you can't rush with f3, because f6, and it's a difficult position. I mean, probably better is h6. And yeah, the position is difficult. This doubled pawn makes life very, very difficult. And you know, despite material being equal, it's difficult for white to make a move, it's difficult for black to make a move. And the queen b3 may be more ambitious, but slightly better would have been queen to a5. Looking for some sort of attack on the c7 square, maybe reroute the knight, attack the queen. Maybe rerouting the knight to here would have been better. But you can't, because the queen would have to occupy that square. Yeah, you'd have to go here, you trade off this bishop, and then you can get a very, very nice presence here. f6. I feel like it's a bit of a nothing move. Preparing this, obviously, but I feel like that only benefits white in the long run. Taking here just looks so good for white. Jinx forgets that this isn't checkers. So once takes, you don't have to... We're not certain why he takes with this. It's... Yeah, now... I mean, pawn takes, rook takes, both work, but... Yeah, Jinx move orders himself, and now he's down a bishop. I would just take. And it's suddenly looking a lot more playable for Turt in a position where it should have been much worse. Jinx unfortunately move orders himself into a worse position. But bishop e7, and I'm not certain I like that move. Look at rook g7. It's such a strong counterattack there. And in fact, Jinx does find it, and now he's 3 pawns for the piece, and Turt can't play this. Loses another pawn. And he has to always be cerebral about this bishop. I mean, what happens when this pawn starts marching? This queen is pinned. Here attacks the rook, and Jinx, again, does not take his time. He does not realize that this is under attack, that this is under attack. There's so much happening on the board here. And Jinx sacrifices the exchange for what? I mean, queen takes, and I would argue that Turt is just infinitely better here. Jinx, again, needs to take a bit more time with his moves. He's got 7 minutes. He doesn't have to trade down every single time. Just take that extra 10 seconds. Find out what is better. This isn't checkers. You don't have to take every time. I'm not certain what Turt is thinking about. I mean, just queen takes queen and black is completely winning. And because of how Jinx has played this, he has 2 isolated weaknesses. I mean, just double up. You don't even need to double up the rooks. Just get a rook to the 2nd rank. Take the other rook around. But this is a step in the wrong direction. He's letting things happen that he shouldn't. And here, if Jinx has any amount of cerebral... Yeah, he's looking to reroute the queen. Rook f8 is Yeah, rook f8 was a move as well. Queen defends here. You have to be a bit careful though, because after rook f8, if queen takes, that's forced to take back, and then you lose the bishop. I mean, it's still completely winning for black, but it's a difficult position. Because it's rook and knight versus two rooks. Yeah. And again, taking his time, he needs to look to improve this bishop. I wouldn't mind seeing, you know, some sort of dark squared infiltration with the queen. You know, perhaps something like this. It seems parryable by that, but then the queen gets this. That loses a pawn, so you have to be very, very careful. And, you know, maybe, like, having queens on the board is so dangerous for Tat, because as long as there's queens on the board, Jinx can make some counterplay here, and given that he has a passer in a flank, that's pretty dangerous. And this pawn structure is never going to break through for anything. I don't think I like that move. King c7. I mean, queen g4 and queen g4, queen e6. Ah, but there's a trick. There's a trick if ever this rook moves or is traded off. Rook g8 is very strong. There's a trick, because if queen here, you can, let's say that these two rooks come off the board. Queen here, you can sacrifice the queen. Assuming that the queen comes to here. So queen here. Take these two off. You can sacrifice the queen here. And after king takes, there's bishop here, and you win back the queen. And then it's rook versus knight in the endgame. And well, there's definitely play. Yes, and queen g4 is found. High likelihood that looking for queen e6 and then just taking here. But again, it's dangerous, this position, because I mean, Turt is up the rook for 3 pawns, and you know, if Jinx can trade off one pair of rooks, maybe these pawns start marching down and they start going, but it's dangerous. You need to conserve your material when there's such an imbalance like this, and you always have to be worried about some things. You can't play king b1 anymore. King b1 walks straight into this pin, and then bishop a3 is so strong. You're very lucky that your knight can hop in onto b3 here, and in fact b3 is probably the best square for it, looking to block up the hole here on c5. There's no pawns that can push it, so that's a very nice outpost square for the knight. This, again, is a bit of a nothing move. You're just helping the opponent come to this square. And queen e6 is found. I'm certain that Jinx will be happy with this. And again, after knight c5, Jinx will be in a very good spot. He's got those 3 pawns. Yes, he's down the rook, but okay, here he has to be very careful. Do not trade the queens. Play rook takes, and he'll be very, very nicely poised. Rook takes, that's a check. Very important. So let's see if Jinx finds this sequence. Rook takes. If the king moves, he'll be equal material again, so rook has to take. And then queen takes. And it's queen and rook versus queen and knight, but this knight again can jump in here, make lots of threats against the king. And I wouldn't be surprised if a4, a5 started being played. And of course, after queens are still on the board, you can start moving these pawns and they will make another queen. Jinx will be very happy here. Look at this dominant dark squared control for Jinx. If Jinx gets to play f4, this bishop is locked out of the game. Again, this bishop is pinned, so it can't even make a counterattack here. As I said, like earlier in this game, this bishop is a 2.5 point bishop. It might as well be a glorified pawn at this point. Meanwhile, I mean, this is also a 2.5 point knight, but it has so much potential to become an absolute menace. And if this bishop doesn't move, then after f4 here, the knight can jump in onto f7. And Jinx finds, rook takes. And again, Turt needs to find something here where he doesn't move the king. He has to take back with the rook. And queen has to take the rook back. And as I said, Jinx is now up the pawn. He can't afford to trade queens here. I would not trade queens here. I would instead play... queen back here, maybe. f6 is interesting, but then you walk into this and... Well, I mean, I suppose you can't play that yet, but... f6, there's some... here, I suppose. That's a bit annoying. And you have to just maneuver your queen around. And he finds queen f6. Let's see, does Turt find queen d8? They're both down to 3 minutes, and I really like how Jinx has been navigating this this endgame. He's making sure to keep the queens on the board. He's definitely looking to everything look good here. Again, I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, at this point, honestly, c4 is not a bad break to make. Yes, you drop the pawn here, but your knight gets super active. And in fact, there's a hidden idea here. If this, and the queen can't take, obviously, because this, so the queen has to move. And in fact, e6 is so strong here now. Because if c4 takes, there is a chance for, you know, some forceful king move, and then there might be a fork of the queen and the king. This is why knights are so tricky in the endgame. I would not mind just seeing e6 here. And look at what e6 is. It's a multifaceted move. It opens up this diagonal for the queen. It attacks this queen. And what square does the queen have to go to? I mean, it can't go here. That walks into e7. Can't go here, really. That's just such a terrible square. Again, the queen falls into the same trap that the dark squared bishop fell into. These are squares that are not available. And here, you can't play e7 immediately, but you can play f4 here. f4 looking to play this, and then there's a potential fork here with the knight, forking the queen and the rook. So here, f4, monstrously powerful move. And of course, the idea is also f5, looking to just support this pawn, 2 connected passed pawns. This position is so winning for Jinx if he can find f4. I mean, there's so many things that win in this position as well. a3 even, but a3, you know, there's some counterplay against these pawns. He has to be careful. f4 shuts the door on that. Jinx taking his time thinking, what is the best move in this position? Finds f4, look at that. Jinx navigating this endgame like a master. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if knight f3 into e5. This attack does not work. Queen back. And in fact, there is even more dangerous queen here. Queen g7, forking the rook, and if the rook moves down, then you lose the rook. If the queen defends, you can just take the queen. This is completely winning. And in fact, forcing queen, this just loses on the spot. Turret loses both the rook and the queen. Look at this play by Jinx. He's going to make a second queen here. Now, all he has to do is just make sure there's no stalemate. As long as the king has access to these squares, it will be fine. And Jinx has 1,003 ways to mate here. And it's worth noting that queen coming to here or here will be a check on those squares. 2 queens is unlosable. Muffs would stalemate. Again, here you don't have to worry. You can make another queen. There's not much to say about it. Now the question is, does Jinx know his checkmating patterns? Here, both are fine. Here, and the king has to go someplace. There's this move, which is mate in 1. Well done, Jinx. What a masterful game. And if we look at the analysis here, I wouldn't be surprised if Jinx played with an incredible accuracy there. f4 was apparently a blunder. What does the engine find for... Yes, I got rook f8, but then after queen here, king here. What's the issue with this? Here. Ah, you lose the pawn. I see. f4 apparently, that's not so much. But yeah, here, despite what the engine thinks, this was a fantastic game by Jinx. Look at that. 3 points for Jinx. Brentai versus Kazama. Black openings? Don't play the River 6 attack, but the Benko Gambit is actually quite good. E4 by Kazama. Rentai playing the Caro Khan. Look at that. Kazama should play D4 here unless he wants to play the 2 knights Caro Khan. Here, the most principled move, D5. There's a few moves here. And the most principled is the advanced, the most challenging variation. This is what I tell all of my students to learn, but in fact, Kazama learns the fantasy variation. This is so tricky. The fantasy variation has so many traps for black to fall into. And knight f6, that walks straight into e5. And you'll notice that that pawn restricts all of these moves of the knight. The knight has to go back here, or even has to undevelop itself. This knight does not normally come out to f6 in the Caro-Kann. Normally, after the bishop comes out and this, note that the bishop actually can't come out anymore because it would be trapped. And this move, knight h5, this just walks straight into g4. Again, this is one of the traps of the fantasy variation, and in fact, that knight is trapped. If he had to undevelop the knight, normally in the Caro-Kann, the knight goes here and here, attacking this pawn, looking to undermine it, but this knight lost 5 moves into the opening here in the fantasy variation of the Caro-Kann. Evidently, Kazama read up on his theory, knows his moves, finds his traps. And the tragic thing is there isn't even a desperado for the knight. Any of these squares loses. This opens the rook. This gets the bishop out. This immediately taken. Just look at what a position Kazama is in on move 5. And in fact, Rentai playing e6 prematurely. This bishop no longer is able to come out. Queen h4 looking for some counterplay, but did you know in this position, king e2, completely fine. In fact, maybe even king d2 is fine. But king e2, there is a trap. There is a trap here again in the fantasy variation. King e2, if this queen sticks around, knight h3, bishop here looks to trap the queen. After something defends this pawn, this queen is trapped. The queen takes the pawn, and now there's a couple moves here. I mean, c4, looking to break, get this knight behind. You know, at some point in the future, having to play this move here, f4, completely clamping down on the center. This queen, if it sticks around for too long, as I've said, you know, knight h3, knight f4, look at that. Queen is attacked. We'll have to move someplace. Can't move here, because then it walks into an incredibly strong move like knight takes there, re-counterattacks. Here, c4 played by Kazama, very principled, just looking to break open the center, you know, get his pieces active, and just enjoy his position where he's up his knight. And here, given how locked the structure is, I mean, Rentai has to take here. He has to make some way for this bishop, because if Kazama is allowed c5, Rentai just loses. Positionally lost. He will play b4, a3. Will develop his pieces. He doesn't even really need to develop his pieces much beyond, you know, the standard squares. He can manually castle his king. And then he can launch some sort of minority attack here, trying to open up on this side of the board. point all of his pieces that way. Try and get in. But c5, here we go. Preventing c5 from Kazama. And you have to be careful here. The most principled move here is c takes. You cannot play d takes. That frees up this bishop, which, whilst it is still the good bishop in the Caro-Kann, you have to be very, very careful. And indeed, c takes. After this, you're not too worried. You can play more than a few moves. You can play knight to c3, and you can prepare all sorts of moves. Again, you want to get this king moved, so you can play f4. Put the knight behind it. You'll be so happy here. And indeed, we just see such a commanding grasp of the position. And the more that Rentai trades, the worse he'll be. It's important to note that this is a free pawn. Attacks here. Also looks to threaten this fork. Look at that. Rentai's position is crumbling under Kazama's attack in the Caro-Kann fantasy variation. He is showing such promise with this position. Bishop back, but this is an issue. There is a trap here. Let's see. Does Kazama find it? As it stands, this is just a fine move set as well. The Queen 5. Well, rather Queen A4, sorry. And all Kazama has to worry about is this absolute pin, but there's not much to say about it. He's in such a commanding position. Queen A4 check. And there's obviously the block, but I mean, Queen C2 and very nice. And again, Queen C2, bishop cannot abandon this square. Kazama finds Queen C2. Look at that. Knight C6. At this point, there's more than a few ways to just go about it. Again, just develop your pieces. Be happy with your position. Your king, despite being in the center of the board, is completely safe. Bishop developed. And walks into a fork. And how it turns table. Yeah, I've that walks into another fork. And Kazama went from completely winning in the fantasy variation to dropping 2 forks at once. But you know what they say about low elo chess? And that is, you can be up 12 points of material, but you could still find an absurd way to win. So all Kazuma needs to do is not trade. And a reminder that this knight is trapped, so it's not actually 12 points that is down, but it's only about 10 points of material that he's down. Oh, no, it would be 9. I'm challenged. This position is crushing for... Yes, you do. Knight h3, bit of a step in the wrong direction after bishop takes. If bishop takes back, counting exercise gone wrong. Now Rentai up 15 points of material cleanly, and there's even a threat for the other fork. It's looking so rough. But you can always hope that players do not know how to checkmate. Yeah, Kazuma taking his time to think, but he placed this. Arguably, there would be better this, and yes, indeed. Look at this quadruple fork. Yeah, the fork. The number 4, and again, this. Don't go back to here or else you walk back into the fork. Well, quintuple not so much, because if you took that then you would lose the queen. And here, look at that. Look at those crisscross applesauce. The king has 2 squares to go to. And both of them lose. Well, this one loses the knight to another fork. This one seems like the only move, but then there's queen here. There's even knight here, rescuing the knight. This knight who was meant to die in the corner of the board can come back. Deliver a check. And in fact, look at this net around the king. All of these squares are covered around the king, and that leaves 3 squares here. It's found there's 3 squares that the king can go to. Goes here. Look at that move. And though it's not checkmate, goes here. Okay, principled move there. Issue, once again, a fork. Alternatively, once again, a fork. But this move is fine as well. And again, observe the power of the pieces. White once again has 3 squares to go to. And honestly, if I was Rentai, it's the mate here. Thank you for the follow. I would have. I'm not certain about short castles. There's a few ways to continue the attack here. Just picking up the knight. But you can bring another piece to the party and it's still complete winning. Here, there's still this, and in fact that. So I mean, come on. Cheeky f6. F6 would have dropped. F5. F5, I suppose, on Passant is a bit risky. Where is the mate here? There has to be a mate here. H5, cutting this off from the king and creating a mating net. But he might take a step in the wrong direction here. Now, you know, these squares are covered, but this square wasn't. Goes here. There's a few moves here. Obviously, first that comes to mind is this incredible move. Knight e3 check. That hangs the bishop in the corner, but look at that. H5 and mate might be unstoppable. Instead, g5. Look at that, still putting pressure on the pinned piece. What a great move. Again, defending this, you can't take it because of the pin. King moves that way, and I mean, there's once again a dozen and 3 ways to win here. There's this, which might not actually work anymore. Takes. I mean, it's not a fork, but you attack the bishop, and it's complicated position. But of course, just bringing a rook to the party. You can even move your king up, looking to cut off all 4 of these squares. I'm not so certain that g5, was a step in the right direction, but indeed, checkmate is found. Kazama sees all of these squares are covered. And well done to Kazama. Now we see round 3 standings. Thankfully, Molnea, who can standings for round 3, or rather matchups. for round 3. I saw that Molnea needs to play. Molnea needs to not play today. That's okay. That is okay. Rentai won? Facts! You are so correct and true and right. Rentai did win. Submit scores. Or rather, Rentai. Reopen, yes. Win, 3-0. And this should now be updated. Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So, coming up next is Kit Dash versus ZZ Board. And I'll get the challenge. Can we see the engine analysis? Is Kit here? You better hope so. And yeah, look at that. Unfortunately, does not see that this is a free pawn that was. No, Rentai, after this, blundering a queen fork. Round 3 bracket didn't update? Oh fuck, what have I done? Why is that? No, it seems to have. The standings have, at least. And these are not so important because it's round 3. Okay, so at Kit, are you online? Let's see. Yes, you do have to. You do have to play another one today. Because you are up against. Oh wait, no, Molnea can't play today, so no, you don't play this one today. Yes. All right, at ZZZ board versus Kit Dash. So yeah, Kit with the white pieces. Board with the black pieces. Tat and Rentai have different scores, but a match. It is 0-2. Can I reset this? Hold on. Let me take a picture of this. Go on to Paint. Surely I don't have to reset the bracket. But they're playing. Kit once again going for his special move. It's probably an odd amount of people. Yeah, I think that after the draw that we had, board walks into the trap. What the fuck, board? What the fuck, board? You knew that Kit was going to play this. Yeah, at this point, it's not even Kit. It's all of his opponents. Like, they know that he's going to be playing Queen H5. Once again, Kit looking to take control of the weak square there. A few ways to play it. Now, the standings put you against Train Jumper. You're 2-0, our boy. You have no one to blame but yourself. Board will be kicking himself after this blunder, but he just has to consolidate his pieces, you know? I mean, it's a terrible position. But, you know, Bishop F6, Queen E7. Not quite. Board doesn't quite find the correct move here. Again, after Queen here, there is this threat. He has to play Queen E7. Queen F6. Queen F6 gets booted here, and that's far from ideal. Actually, there's the idea Queen F6, if here, then you play Queen G7, forcing either the queen to retreat or for you to trade off queens, and this honestly isn't such a terrible position for black. Well, I mean, it's an awful position for black. You're down 2 pawns in a rook, but that isn't an undefensible position at the 1000 level. But board should know this is the weak square in the position. He has to defend it. What's the actual range? Like 1200 and below. Board finding queen e7. Kit can't just immediately capture. I mean, I suppose he can. But will only be up. What? 3 pawns and a rook for the bishop. He'll still be up material. Knight f3. Looking for this. Can't take it or else the checkmate threat reappears. You have to be cerebral if this... I suppose this, but then... There's some venom one way or another. This position is so poor for board. And of course you have to worry about this being under attack as well. There is potential that you can play this. And in fact, bishop h6 prepares knight f6, trapping queen. Not quite. There is always h8. And that would actually force a repetition. Wait, it forces a repetition. Board can squeeze a draw out of this position. If board finds bishop h6, there is a threefold repetition opportunity for board. Assuming that this queen doesn't move. It hinges on A, the queen not moving to one of these squares. The board doesn't find it, he plays f6! And whilst that prevents this and this, it doesn't help him that he has a weak square here. Oh, shit, wrong thing, sorry. Honestly? What? Again, this threat is here still, but it's making it harder than it needs to be. Obviously, he wants that checkmate on f7, but he's giving board more and more time. And that's something you can't afford to do here. Here I just see consolidation with pieces. If ever, like you realize that there's only 3 pieces out and one of them is the queen. If board can start developing quickly, he'll actually be in a very good spot. In fact, maybe bishop e6, completely stopping the attack in its tracks. Not only double defending this square, but also re-counterattacking this bishop. Yeah, honestly, d6. Queen g8. I suppose so, yes, there's this threat. In that case, queen g7. Did Kit Scholars? He tried. Board plays knight h6, which does defend against this. develops a piece. And again, there's always this idea, d6, bishop to e6. And, well, I mean, the king's castle has been destroyed, but there's no counterplay here. If I was Kit, I would... Well, completely lost. Board has 3 minutes, Kit has 8.5. Unless board is able to make some miracle happen here, if Kit finds h4, it's lights out. But Kit doesn't find it. He plays knight c3. And board here, again, can redouble his efforts on this diagonal. d6, bishop e6. And in fact, that's not all. Could just be queen g7 here. Completely alleviating the pressure. Queen h5. And again with this idea, except this time it will come with a fork. But board plays c6. He's looking to prepare d5. And once again, this h4 move is available. Will Kit see it? I don't know. Kit does not find it. And unfortunately, despite what it seems, board might have waited a little too long. Kit is up 8 points of material, Jinx. Board playing b5. Look at that flank attack. Forcing this bishop back to here. I'm not sure what Kit's thinking about, really. There's only one square for the bishop to continue this threat along this diagonal. And in fact, there are threats here. a5, a4, trapping the bishop. a5 needs to be met with either a3 or a4 himself. a3 probably the better move, making a flight square for the bishop on a2. But board finds b4 immediately. This knight has to go, can't go here, might be able to go here, could go here. Probably much better to go here, looking to reroute onto this square here. But again, board is not without counterplay. He can develop his bishop, or he can play something like d6 here. Once again, looking to bring the bishop onto e6. The board is coming down to 1 minute on time. He can't have this happen. Look at the fact that he's spent 12 moves with 10 minutes. If he's not careful, he'll be like Molnay and he'll be living on the increment. Board needs to find a move here. Literally anything will do, as long as it doesn't blunder mate. He finds d5. And here, if... But this is no longer really a big issue. It's not so much a factor. Takes. Most principled would be queen takes here with check. Ah, but actually that goes to the boomerang back. But would board see it? Who knows? Here you've got a few moves. That is not one of them. Queen takes knight with check. But it doesn't see it. And now it's entirely possible that the turns may table after e3. Bishop here. If this pawn takes, there is so much here. But board finds knight f7, blocking up the square. The king is so exposed. But it's safe. Possible candidate moves here. Kit's looking to just cash in at this point. He knows that after this exchange, he's got 7 minutes. He's got 7 points of material on board. Board's got 11 points of material on the back rank. Look at these pawn weaknesses. Unless there's something catastrophic here, board has to blockade this pawn. Goes here. Okay. Wouldn't be so terrible to have that. And this. Here, board just needs to make some tangible threats on the opponent. F5, attacking the loose knight. Whenever you're in a losing position, you have to make threats on a position. And bishop b7, maybe looking to play c5, opening this diagonal. Well, mid-side, it technically ended in 3, after board blundered a rook in the corner, but... c5, if takes, this hangs. More importantly, the rook is swinging over. This is a weakness now. Knight has to move first. Ah, this is probably more principled, yes. There's this move now. Important, you have to defend... you can't go there. You have to go somewhere like this. That works too, I suppose. But... there's some threats. This doesn't work because this knight is still defending. And this is a dark square. Your light square bishop can only see 32 squares on the 64 squares of the chessboard. What is this move? Looking to play against this pawn. But the pawns will roll down the board. You can take this, but rook here, look at that. That is a scary move. That is not the right direction that Kit should be going in. There's But look at all of this. All of the important squares for Kit are on dark squares. Everything. The king cannot be checked. All board has to do is not move this pawn. Also note that he guards the queening square with his dark square bishop. As long as he doesn't take with this pawn, he will be fine. And in fact, there's a few traps here even. If this pawn ever comes, this can take. And although 2 connected passes on the 6th rank will stop a rook, there's a rook and a bishop. There's a pawn and a bishop to defend with it. But this is a step in the wrong direction. Changing diagonal, I'm not so certain about this. When you play against 2 rooks, you have to look for some sort of counterplay here. I suppose the idea is this, so that the king can start moving. A take back is issued. Board might have mouse slipped that. Now board is thinking. 4 looks like a reasonable move to me. And again, it's an issue of this bishop on the light squares. Its important role is defending this queening square and this queening square. Board has to take this. He has to. But board does not! Bishop takes. Board has 50 seconds. And now the counterplay has slowed a bit for Kit. He's not playing this in the way he should. Board can move the bishop back if here. Taking is fine. Why? Because this bishop always controls this square. Board is able to take that pawn. Alternatively, he also doesn't have to. But taking the pawn is the easiest move. And Kit might be moving that, but he's allowing board to move his pawn as well. And the fact of the matter is, this bishop is on double duty. Look at this bishop. Board has to move his bishop now, potentially here. This works as well. Look at how he's defending it. Actually, this... Awesome. Here. Can't take because this was check. When it's a queen. Here. Still doesn't work because promotes and you're just up the rook. Here. King move, here. King move. Can't. There's the impassable wall. Board is in a winning position. Against all odds, board with the bishop and the rook has made an unstoppable fortress in this corner of the board, and this passed pawn can't be stopped. As we know, the square has to look like this, but that's only in king and pawn endgames. There's a bishop here. If the bishop creates the impassable wall with... And look at this. Once again, the impassable wall. Board is winning against Kit in the endgame. Despite being down 4 points of material, despite having been down 12 points of material. Board is in a winning endgame here. And there's a few ways to play it, but yeah, promote the queen. This wins a rook. Oh, well, you can't play that. This wins a rook. Board does not see it. This also wins a rook. But board doesn't see it. Board, you have to look for tactics here. You're allowing unnecessary counterplay. There's a check here. Check move. Board is playing with fire. He can't allow this to keep... I mean, I suppose that doesn't work. That check doesn't work. Don't play that check. It was this check, though. Wait a minute. Check if king here. Board can take this pawn. If this promotes... Is there a way for a win? Board can't access this diagonal. This diagonal is blocked by the rook. But the important thing is that either of these promotions are not checked because the king is on the 7th rank. Board has to find something here. Looking for check here. Kid is playing this wrong. That's a free queen. And if he promotes again, there's check. And he makes a second queen also with check. Board is completely winning. Make another queen. There's mate this way. There's mate... I mean, there's... Look at that. Board doesn't find mate in 1! But he'll find this mate in 1. Or this mate in 1. Thank fuck. And board, from the depths of hell, takes a win against Kit. And Magan just navigates that endgame so well. Wow. That is certainly one of them. Yellow, XTY, your match is now Jello is... And if we look at the analysis board here, I'd just like to illustrate after B2, this move, such a blunder. He had to look for this because the issue is this bishop cannot do double duty. If here, then if the pawn promotes, and the pawn has to promote, the rook sacrifices itself. And here, and then again, if this rook takes, queens, because this bishop is no longer patrolling this diagonal. That, despite being so winning for so long for Kit, the end game is where he falls down and board misses checkmate in 1 multiple times. That bishop. What a masterpiece. And, you know, board, despite blundering his rook in the corner, plays at an 84 accuracy. 84 accuracy. And I mean, look at this. Look at this end game. Such a beautiful, beautiful showing here. Making counterplay where there shouldn't be any. What a fantastic performance. Realizing that there is no threat here because of the bishop. And further realizing that after the pawn starts moving, there's no threat of promotion, and here, this is winning. And in fact, the engine doesn't even see that this is such a winning position until queening, sacrificing the bishop. Because you can push this. There was a few other ways to play it. You could push this, you could give a check this way, but it doesn't matter. Queening doesn't work because you lose that and then you make another queen. Fantastic performance by board. And XTY and Yellow Jello are not responding. Let me see, is Yellow Jello online on Steam? Your chess game is now. And board did not find this checkmate in one. Or this checkmate in one. Instead that is this. Yellow Jello says, no, it's not. My tournament match is in 30. Ah, right. I see. Yellow Jello will be delaying his match then. Molnea double Jinx is delayed. Murph's Curania. Yeah. Let's see. Is Murph's online? Well, we'll ping them and see are either of you online. It seems that Sunday is a slow day. If not, then at Snowpoint at Kazama. We'll see. I'm just impressed, honestly. The fact that it was so losing in this position. What is the best move here? Knight defense is apparently the best move. But here there was... We'll ignore that Kit doesn't find mate in one. And here, I feel like this was where it started to go wrong. Because despite all of this, again, the blockade is made, and it's completely winning, but... Look at this incredible blockade by board. Forcing a trade of pieces. Apparently bishop back here was better, but evidently board saw far into the future. Knew that his bishop was needed on this diagonal. I just can't believe the fact that it was so... Yeah, here there was a perpetual check with the queen. Wow. What a fantastic game. Okay, well, Kazama Snowpoint. Okay. Until you have black pieces. That has white pieces. Alright, well, we're skipping ahead to Rentai. And in fact, we're going to see next game, will JG spend the night on the couch after this? Does he let his girlfriend win? Or does he go for the win himself? That'd be very good. Shagey on the couch, what will he do? Probably Valentine's Blitz is over, right? Surely. Okay, Rentai with the black pieces. Knight f3 from Turt. Very non-committal move. There is a chance for this to follow the game of the century. But in fact, it is this gambit once again. Knight f6. Most principal move is knight back. It's also d4. Here there's some quick development plans. d6 I do not like from Rentai. D5 was needed more. And it seems that Turt is just looking to make a very standard looking sort of King's Indian attack position. Rentai cannot trade off this bishop like this. Queen d7 is needed to be played to trade off there. But the most reasonable move here is castles for Turt, followed by d6. Rentai playing knight b d7. c6. What the fuck are these moves? d6, very common idea here. Alternatively, c4, d4, trying to get a sort of Catalan structure. Yeah, d3, looking to unlock this bishop. This is the King's Indian attack. Here we see queen b6. Looking to get a bit of a clamp on the center. Might be preparing d5. With the bishop coming out this way, but e4 immediately. What a move. Unlocking this bishop out this way. Once again, d5 is played. If takes, I wonder which is better to take with, because you can play the hanging pawn structure, but I'm not certain that's so good. I would not mind instead Rentai taking with the knight and seeing how it goes. But this feels like a step in the wrong direction. Immediately there's this, but also there's the long-term weakness on b2. I'm not certain that I like this move. And queen takes b2, that's another move I'm not certain about, but in fact, now that the bishop is here, if takes here, well, first of all, you lose the rook, but if ever takes here, this attacks the bishop. So there's, yeah, the most principled move is this, but no, man, there's a lot to be said here. There's another trap if this retakes. What was I calculated here? Here, here. I suppose here, 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 here. Here. I don't see much. Queen a3. Looking to avoid any chance of this. Note that black can still castle short. Can still castle long. I would not try to castle long here. But it's also probably the only decent choice, right? Because h5, h4. Bobby Fischer said that looks like a dubious move. Knight h5, and you're doing quite well, I feel. Maybe I just disable auto mod. Much done, fantastic. I'm not sure what Rentai's thinking about. There's something he doesn't like. Maybe he's scared of something like Rook e1, but yeah, he finds Knight h5. Possibly calculated h3 here. And then there's a choice. Either takes here, in which case takes here. And I think with those light squared weaknesses, it will be black who's pushing for the advantage. Look at all of this congestion. All of these pieces looking at each other. But Rentai needs to activate his other pieces. d4. A little sus. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like just taking this bishop now is a very good idea. But it's bishop takes knight first. And that presents an interesting issue. Queen takes, queen takes. Bishop takes. I'm not so certain after knight takes bishop that white is any better. But Rentai hangs a knight. That's a hanging knight. That's a hanging knight. Right, JG. Do you think Turt sees the hanging knight? What the fuck? Never punished. And Rentai looks to take the house with him. And in fact, there is a threat here after he takes all of this. If here, that's mate. Turt's little house for the king is no longer a thing anymore. And in fact, this isn't a threat. Rentai does not need to see ghosts here. If he takes this and takes this, completely winning. Rentai looking to attack the rook back. Kind of invites... not that. What kind of moves are there? Yeah, rook all the way back. I'm not certain I like this. Once again, there's no issue with taking this pawn. Of course, developing pieces getting castled is fine, but when you have an opportunity, you should seize it. Plus, the bishop would be much happier on d6 in the long run. Not immediately, because you would hang a bishop. Like Rentai did earlier, and didn't take it, but that's fine. It's fine. Pet's thinking for a long time here, and finds bishop g4, which still hangs this pawn. Why is Rentai not taking the pawn? What is he scared of? Look, they're playing principled chess, but sometimes when you have an attack, you can ignore principles. This is one of those times. I mean, come on. It's been hanging for 7 turns or something. And more importantly, that's now under attack because this knight has blocked the diagonal of the queen. Ah. I gave Lammy Stockholm syndrome. Thank fuck. Okay. Yeah, there's a few ways to play. Simplest. Queen trade is probably simplest. I don't like it, but whatever. Get a rook to here. Do not be the one to initiate the trade, but you can move a rook onto the open file and you'll be happy. Here, I wouldn't mind seeing takes with bishop. Note that this is opposite colored bishops. If all the pieces come off the board, it's likely to be a draw. F4. Suspect move. I'm not certain I like that move at all, actually. This is a fantastic move here. Now, not trade like this. You have to keep the tension between the rooks. And more importantly, oh no. So obviously, this comes with the threat that if this ever takes, this is under attack. But that is remedied by simply taking yourself. But instead, again, Rentai looks for this outpost for the knight. These pawns are too far advanced. But the same could be said about an outpost here or here for this bishop. And in fact, this is a multifaceted move. It's looking to play c5, kicking out this knight. But you have to be very, very careful here, because if this knight jumps to here... Okay, just king h8, only move. The French defense is quite good. As black, you have to learn the exchange and the... For what it's worth, I think that the exchange is probably much more easy to play at a lower level. Thing. Honestly? There's a chance that this bishop gets trapped. Something like g6, f5? Well, the issue is that white has to choose if they play the exchange or the advance, so you'll have to learn both of them.